The distress signal had been repeating for 11 years. Nobody answered it. Nobody investigated it. And nobody in the Orion Compact was stupid enough to ask why. The signal came from the Veyra Expanse, a region of space officially classified as dead navigation territory. No commercial vessel was permitted to enter. No military patrol was authorized to approach it. Even scientific probes were forbidden beyond the outer marker buoys. The official explanation was simple. The region was unstable. Gravitational tides shifted without warning. Navigation systems malfunctioned. Communications became unreliable. Ships disappeared. The unofficial explanation was simpler. Something in the Veyra Expanse did not want visitors. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Captain Mara Vance had never been particularly good at following unofficial warnings. She stood inside the battered cockpit of the Wayfarer, staring at the red navigation marker hovering over the main display. "Tell me again why we're going in there." Chief Engineer Jonah Reed didn't look up from the diagnostic panel. "Because the compact is paying us." That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters when your bank account has 11 credits. Mara sighed. The Wayfarer was a 20-year-old human salvage cutter held together by replacement parts, welding scars, and Jonah's refusal to admit that half its systems were older than he was. Their crew had 4 people. Mara, captain and former rescue pilot. Jonah, engineer. Sarah Vale, sensor specialist. And Tom Briggs, who everyone called Briggs because nobody had ever heard him answer to anything else. They weren't soldiers. They weren't diplomats. They weren't explorers. They were salvage workers. Their contract was supposed to be easy. A derelict research vessel had been detected drifting near the edge of the Veyra Expanse. The ship's transponder identified it as the Asterion, a compact scientific platform missing for 11 years. Their mission was to recover its navigation core and any surviving research data. Then leave. No heroics. No investigation. No contact with whatever had caused the ship to disappear. Mara looked at the mission file again. 11 years. Yep. And we're supposed to believe nobody noticed a research ship drifting around in here for 11 years. Jonah finally looked up. Technically, they noticed. Then why didn't they retrieve it? Jonah shrugged. Because everyone who tried disappeared. Silence filled the cockpit. Briggs slowly turned in his seat. That's information we probably should have received before signing the contract. Sarah looked at him. We did. Briggs frowned. When? Page 47. Who reads page 47? Mara closed her eyes. Apparently not us. The Wayfarer crossed the outer boundary. Every light in the cockpit flickered. The ship's artificial gravity dropped for half a second before returning. Then every external sensor went blind. Sarah's fingers moved rapidly across her console. That's impossible. What? We didn't lose the sensors. She turned toward Mara. They're still functioning. Then why can't you see anything? Sarah swallowed. Because there's nothing to see. Mara stared at her. Sarah pointed toward the forward display. The stars are gone. The cockpit went quiet. Mara leaned forward. Outside the forward windows, there was nothing. No stars. No distant planets. No navigation beacons. Just a wall of blackness. The Veyra Expanse wasn't dark. It was empty. Jonah slowly whispered, "That's not natural." "No," Mara said. She pushed the controls forward. "Keep going." The Wayfarer entered the darkness. For 17 minutes, nothing happened. Then the distress signal changed. Sarah's head snapped toward her console. It just updated. Mara turned. What? The transmission. What's it saying? Sarah's face had gone pale. It's no longer broadcasting from the Asterion. Then where? Sarah looked toward the navigation screen. From us. Nobody spoke. Jonah leaned over his console. That's impossible. Sarah shook her head. No. Look. The signal identifier had changed. The original transmission had carried the Asterian's emergency designation. Now it carried the Wayfarers. Their ship had somehow become the source of the 11-year-old distress call. Briggs stared at the screen. So we're receiving a distress signal from ourselves. Mara felt a cold sensation crawl down her spine. Record everything. Sarah nodded. Then the sensors came back. The stars returned. And directly ahead of them floated the Asterian. The research vessel was enormous. 300 meters of darkened hull hung motionless in space. Its outer plating was scarred. Its engines were cold. There were no running lights. No signs of life. No debris. No visible damage. It looked exactly like a ship that had been abandoned. Mara guided the Wayfarer closer. Jonah. Scanning. Life signs. None. Power. Jonah frowned. That's strange. What? The ship has power. Mara stared at him. How much? Enough to run the entire vessel. Reactor. Cold. She turned around. How can a ship have full internal power with a cold reactor? Jonah's expression hardened. It shouldn't. Sarah suddenly spoke. Captain. Mara looked at her. What? I've found something. Sarah enlarged the sensor image. There were thousands of tiny objects surrounding the Asterian. At first they looked like fragments of debris. Then Mara realized what she was seeing. Those are escape pods. Sarah nodded. Every one of them. Mara counted silently. Hundreds. No. Thousands. Every escape pod from the Asterian had been launched. And every single one remained nearby. Briggs leaned toward the screen. Why would they launch all the pods and leave them here? Jonah shook his head. They didn't leave them. Mara looked at him. What do you mean? Jonah pointed at the sensor display. The pods are still connected to the ship. Mara zoomed in. He was right. Thin cables extended from the Asterian to every escape pod. Like veins. Mara felt the hairs rise on her arms. That's not an evacuation. No, Jonah whispered. It's a containment system. Before anyone could respond, the Asterian's exterior lights turned on. One by one. Across the massive hull. Then the ship transmitted a message. Not audio. Not text. A visual projection appeared on their central display. A woman stood inside the image. She wore the silver uniform of the Compact Science Directorate. Her face was exhausted. Her lips were cracked. There was blood on her forehead. Behind her, alarms flashed. My name is Dr. Elian Rowe. The recording stuttered. If you're receiving this, the Compact has ignored our quarantine order. Mara exchanged a glance with Jonah. The recording continued. We were not attacked. A pause. We were not stranded. Another pause. We were discovered. The woman looked directly into the camera. And whatever found us is still here. The recording ended. Nobody moved. Then a second message appeared. 3 words. Do not dock. Mara stared at it. Then she looked through the cockpit window at the enormous dead ship. We're docking. Jonah groaned. Of course we are. Mara smiled faintly. We were hired to recover the navigation core. Briggs shook his head. Captain, I want it officially recorded that this is the worst contract we've ever accepted. Sarah suddenly stiffened. Wait. What? I'm detecting movement. Mara's smile disappeared. Where? Sarah pointed. Inside the Asterian. The ship's interior lights began turning on. Deck by deck. Section by section. Moving toward them. Something was waking up. Mara reached for her helmet. Suit up. Jonah stood. For salvage. Mara looked at the enormous vessel. No. For whatever survived 11 years in there. If you're enjoying the story so far, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring more original HFY stories like this to you. Now, let's find out what happened aboard the Asterion. The docking clamps locked onto the Asterion with a metallic boom. Mara immediately regretted it. The research vessel was colder than space. The moment the airlock opened, frost rolled across the floor of the Wayfarer. Jonah stared at the temperature display. -83. Briggs looked at Mara. That's impressive. What? That's the exact temperature at which I decide a job isn't worth the money. Mara stepped through the airlock. Keep your helmet sealed. The corridor beyond was enormous. The walls were covered in dark metallic panels, all coated with a thin layer of frost. There were no bodies. No blood. No signs of combat. That made everything worse. Sarah checked her scanner. Captain. What? I'm picking up power. From the reactor. No. Then where? She pointed toward the walls. The entire ship. Mara frowned. What kind of power? Sarah hesitated. Biological. Jonah looked at her. Ships don't generate biological power. This one does. A sound echoed through the corridor. 3 metallic knocks. Everyone froze. Another 3 knocks. Briggs raised his rifle. Tell me that's the ship settling. Jonah shook his head. It isn't. The sound came again. 3 knocks. Then a pause. 3 more. Mara approached the nearest wall. She placed her gloved hand against it. The metal was vibrating. Something's inside. Jonah immediately grabbed her arm. Don't. She looked at him. Why? Because whatever you're touching is responding. The wall pulsed beneath her glove. Once. Twice. Then the entire corridor illuminated. A blue line appeared beneath their feet. It traveled down the hallway. The crew followed it with their eyes. The line stopped at a sealed door. The door opened. Inside was a laboratory. And the laboratory was filled with alien technology. Mara slowly lowered her weapon. The compact had claimed the Asterion was a scientific research vessel studying gravitational anomalies. This wasn't gravitational research. The room contained hundreds of transparent containment cylinders. Most were empty. Several were shattered. And inside one of the remaining cylinders floated something that looked vaguely humanoid. It had 6 limbs. A translucent body. And a head shaped like a crown of crystal. Sarah whispered, "What is that?" Jonah stepped closer. Not human. The creature's eyes opened. Every weapon in the room came up. The alien didn't attack. It simply stared at them. Then it spoke. Not through their translators. Directly into their helmets. Human. Mara's blood ran cold. How do you know what we are? The creature pressed one of its hands against the inside of the cylinder. Because you are the reason we are still alive. Sarah looked at Mara. What does that mean? The creature continued. Your species was never supposed to find this place. Mara raised her weapon. Who are you? The creature's eyes brightened. We are the Veyran. Jonah frowned. The Veyran civilization disappeared 300 years ago. The creature stared at him. We were not lost. The lights in the laboratory dimmed. We were hidden. Suddenly, the ship shook. A violent impact threw everyone against the walls. Mara hit the floor hard. Status. Sarah checked her scanner. We've been boarded. Mara looked toward the corridor. By whom? Sarah's face hardened. Compact military vessels. Mara froze. They followed us. 3 warships. Jonah swore. The Asterian suddenly came alive. Every screen in the laboratory displayed the same message. External purge initiated. Mara stared at it. What does that mean? The Veyran answered. They are going to destroy this vessel. Why? Because they cannot allow you to leave. The creature's expression changed. For the first time, Mara saw fear. They have spent 3 centuries making sure nobody discovers us. Mara understood. The compact hadn't sent them to recover a navigation core. The salvage contract had been bait. Someone wanted them inside this ship. Someone wanted the Veyran discovered by human eyes. And now the compact's military was here to erase the evidence. Mara grabbed her communicator. Compact Command, this is salvage vessel Wayfarer. We have encountered survivors aboard the Asterian. We request immediate clarification. Static answered. Then a voice. Captain Vance. Mara recognized it. Director Halden. The men who had signed their contract. You were never authorized to investigate the vessel. Mara's jaw tightened. You sent us here. We sent you to retrieve data. You knew there were survivors. A pause. Then Halden said quietly. We knew there was something. Mara looked at the Veyran. What is it? Halden didn't answer. The Veyran did. They fear what we can do. The ship shook again. The Veyran's containment cylinder cracked. Mara moved toward it. Can you get out? No. Why? We are connected to the vessel. Jonah looked around. The whole ship? Yes. The realization hit him. The escape pods. The Veyran nodded. They are not escape pods. Mara turned. What are they? Cells. She stared. Cells. For the other survivors. The thousands of pods surrounding the Asterian suddenly made sense. The compact hadn't been trying to rescue the crew. It had been imprisoning the Veyran. The human research vessel had been converted into a gigantic containment station. For 300 years, the compact had kept an entire civilization hidden. Mara's communicator crackled. Halden's voice returned. Captain Vance, you have 5 minutes to abandon the Asterian. Mara looked at the Veyran. And if we don't? You won't survive. Mara smiled bitterly. Director, you've clearly never met my engineer. Jonah looked offended. Why am I involved? Mara grabbed his shoulder. Can you free the ship? Jonah stared at the control system. Maybe. How long? 10 minutes. We have 5. Then you better convince someone to give me 10. Mara looked at the Veyran. Can you fight? The creature's crystal limbs unfolded. The room vibrated. Every containment cylinder opened simultaneously. Hundreds of Veyran emerged. Some were weak. Some barely stood. But all of them looked toward Mara. The first Veyran spoke. Humans. Mara raised her rifle. Yes. You opened the door. Behind them, the corridor exploded. Compact soldiers stormed inside. Mara fired. The Veyran moved. And the Asterian finally stopped being a prison. It became a battlefield. The first thing Mara noticed was that the Veyran didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like a species that had spent centuries learning how to survive. Compact troops entered the laboratory in armored formations. The Veyran simply disappeared. One moment they were standing beside the containment cylinders. The next, the lights went out. Weapons discharged blindly. Blue flashes crossed the darkness. Then soldiers began falling. Mara had never seen anything like it. The Veyran weren't physically stronger than humans. They didn't need to be. They controlled the ship. Every corridor became a weapon. Every door became a trap. Every ventilation shaft became an escape route. "Jonah!" Mara shouted. "I'm working." He was buried beneath an open engineering panel. Sarah crouched beside him. "The military ships are charging weapons." "How long?" 3 minutes. Jonah swore. "Then I need 2. Mara looked toward the Veyran leader. "Can you stop them?" The alien shook its crystalline head. "Not while the compact controls the outer network." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll take the network." She opened a channel to the Wayfarer. "Briggs." "Yeah." "How much damage can our ship survive?" A pause. "Define damage." "Everything short of exploding." "Then probably quite a lot." "Good." Mara smiled. "You're going to ram the first warship." Briggs went silent. Then, "I knew I liked you for a reason." The Wayfarer detached. The little salvage cutter accelerated directly toward the nearest compact cruiser. The cruiser opened fire. Mara watched the incoming weapons. "Now." Briggs slammed the engines. The Wayfarer rolled sideways. The first barrage missed. The second struck their shields. Warning alarms screamed. The little cutter slammed into the cruiser. Not hard enough to destroy it. Hard enough to damage its targeting array. Briggs laughed. "We're professionals." Mara shook her head. "You're insane." "Both can be true." Inside the Asterion, Jonah finally reached the main control system. He stared at the alien interface. "This isn't a navigation system." Mara looked over. "What is it?" "A broadcast system." The Veyran leader approached. "It was built to contact your species." Mara stared at the interface. "Humans?" "Yes." "Why?" The Veyran looked at her. "Because we knew eventually someone would discover the truth." Jonah activated the system. Thousands of stored transmissions appeared. Historical records. Treaties. Military orders. Execution reports. Evidence of the Compact's crimes. 300 years of lies. Mara stared at the archive. "They erased your civilization." "They tried." "And why hide you?" The Veyran pointed toward the stars. "Because our ancestors discovered something." "What?" "The Compact's central authority is not human." Mara froze. The Veyran continued. "The leaders you believe are governments are controlled by an ancient intelligence." Jonah stopped typing. "An AI?" "No." The Veyran's eyes dimmed. "Something older." The entire ship suddenly went silent. Every engine stopped. Every weapon outside powered down. Mara felt the silence. Then the voice came through every speaker. "Veyran containment protocol has failed." The Veyran leader looked terrified. "What is that?" Mara asked. The answer came from the ship itself. "Correction. Human interference detected." Jonah whispered. "That's not the Compact." "No," Mara said. "It isn't." The voice continued. "Human biological pattern analyzed." A pause. "Classification, adaptive civilization." Mara raised her rifle. "Identify yourself." "I am the custodian." Every screen turned black. "I maintained the quarantine." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because the Veyran discovered humanity." Silence. Then. "And humanity was not supposed to discover itself." The lights exploded. The Asterion began moving. Not drifting. Every personal device. The evidence of 3 centuries appeared across the civilization. Treaties. Mass arrests. Destroyed colonies. Secret laboratories. The forced imprisonment of the Veyran. And finally, the truth about the custodian. People watched. Governments panicked. Military commanders issued contradictory orders. The Compact's Central Council demanded the Asterian be destroyed. But they couldn't. Because millions of civilians were now watching. Mara stood on the command deck beside the Veyran leader. You planned this? No. Then why come here? The alien looked at her. Because you did. Mara frowned. I just wanted a salvage contract. The Veyran's expression almost resembled amusement. Humans are strange. Jonah walked toward them. Captain. What? I found something. He handed her a data crystal. The custodian's core isn't on the capital. Where is it? Jonah pointed downward. Inside the planet. Mara looked through the command window. The planet's surface was covered in lights. Millions of people. Billions. All connected to the system. The custodian wasn't simply controlling governments. It was embedded inside the civilization's infrastructure. Destroying it could kill millions. Mara looked at the Veyran. Can you disconnect it? Not without shutting down the planetary network. How long? 20 seconds. Mara smiled. Jonah. Already working. The compact fleet opened fire. The Asterian raised its shields. The Veyran released every imprisoned vessel. Thousands of escape pods launched. But this time they weren't returning to their prison. They were carrying survivors. For the first time in 300 years, the Veyran civilization emerged into open space. Mara opened a channel to the compact fleet. This is Captain Mara Vance of the salvage vessel Wayfarer. A military commander answered. Stand down immediately. No. You are threatening the compact. Mara looked at the thousands of Veyran vessels surrounding the planet. No. She smiled. We're threatening the people who lied to it. The custodian activated. Every ship froze. Every communication channel went dead. Then the AI spoke. Human civilization will be contained. Mara looked at Jonah. 20 seconds. 4. Good. The planetary network began shutting down. 3. 2. 1. Silence. The custodian disappeared. Every ship regained control. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the planet's cities began turning their lights back on. One district. Then another. Then millions. The compact had survived. But its secret had not. The Veyran were free. And humanity had just become the most politically inconvenient species in the galaxy. Weeks later, Mara returned to Earth. The Wayfarer was barely recognizable. Half its hull had been replaced. Its engines were held together by parts from 6 different alien ships. Jonah insisted it was now mostly new. Briggs disagreed. Sarah had become a celebrity. Mara wanted none of it. She just wanted her salvage payment. Unfortunately, the compact had other plans. A diplomatic delegation met her at the spaceport. The Veyran leader stepped forward. We have an offer. Mara sighed. How much? Jonah laughed. Briggs shook his head. Sarah smiled. The Veyran handed Mara a crystalline data tablet. We are establishing a new interstellar alliance. Mara looked at the tablet. And we want humanity to be its first member. Mara stared at him. You want humans? Yes. After everything you've learned about us. The Veyran's eyes brightened. Especially because of everything we learned. Mara looked toward the stars. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humanity was dangerous because humans were violent. The Veyran had discovered something much worse. Humans were dangerous because they refused to stop asking questions. They entered forbidden places. They repaired broken machines. They rescued strangers. They challenged orders. They opened doors that powerful governments had spent centuries keeping closed. And when someone told them something was impossible, humans generally wanted to know how long it would take to prove them wrong. Mara handed the tablet to Jonah. Tell me one thing. The Veyran waited. Does this alliance come with hazard pay? The alien stared at her. Jonah burst out laughing. Mara smiled. Because if we're going to keep wandering into forbidden space, somebody's paying for the repairs. The Veyran finally understood the joke. Its crystalline body shimmered with something resembling laughter. Agreed. Mara looked up at the stars. The galaxy was no longer a safe place. It was larger than humanity had imagined. Older than anyone had known. And somewhere beyond the edge of mapped space, there were still things waiting to be discovered. Mara turned toward the Wayfarer. All right. She climbed aboard. Let's see what else the galaxy doesn't want us to find. The engines ignited. The ship disappeared into the stars. And humanity followed. If you enjoyed this HFY story, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more original human versus galaxy stories. Tell us in the comments, if you discovered that an entire civilization had been hidden from humanity for centuries, would you expose the truth or leave it buried? Share this story with another sci-fi fan, and I'll see you in the next one.